Hey guys, Randy Potato here with a special Christmas video outlining my wishes for Darkest Dungeon 2 updates going forward. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to subscribe. I post new videos every day. With Darkest Dungeon 2 delayed until Q2 2023, there is now plenty of time to complete what I consider an already great game. Here are just a few suggestions to add to the game as we move towards 1.0 release, some essentially confirmed, others less than likely. The number one item on my Darkest Dungeon 2 wishlist is a difficulty setting, my preference being an Ascension style system. There has been a big knowledge and skill gap in this series going back to Darkest Dungeon 1, and it's only grown with Darkest Dungeon 2, especially with the addition of the Altar of Hope unlock system. This game is very punishing for new players, while for experienced players, they rarely lose even with Infernal Torch. Worse still is there is no real torchless option like Darkest Dungeon 1. Infernal just doesn't remotely compare in difficulty. There are more artificial self-restrictions that can be imposed, of course, but a scaling difficulty system like in Slay the Spire, which has heavily inspired this game, would be best to keep all levels of player happy without having to dismantle the fundamental systems underpinning the entire game. Next is Heroes. While hero paths have added a lot of variety to the original cast of 9, this game is in desperate need of new blood. The original game had almost double this amount of heroes, of course many added later in development and as DLC, but this game needs at least that many heroes for the health of the game long term. The Bounty Hunter being a temporary hero was a devastating blow to the community, still waiting on our first new arrival since last year's release. There is good news on this front, with Vestal highly probable to land in January's update. This gives us an additional healer and back row hero who can compete with Plague Doctor on that front. I'd of course like old favorites like Crusader and Houndmaster to return, and I've often advocated for Musketeer to make an appearance as a rank 4 direct damage specialist who can also heal, but I would also like to see Red Hook's creativity regarding new heroes like Runaway, who's become one of my favorites after being F tier on release. I'd like at least 3 total added by release, but the expectation is we'll only get 2 by 1.0. Hopefully further updates and DLCs will bring them closer to the 17 heroes on Darkest Dungeon 1's final roster. Act variety is the next big challenge to tackle. So far, only the final boss, Ordained buff, and Altar buffs differentiate the acts. Similar to Darkest Dungeon 1, I would like Red Hook to add 1 new enemy to each region for each subsequent act. I know this would be a lot of new enemies to design, more than even designing a full new region, but it would go a long way to making the acts feel more unique and have more of a scaling effect. They could reduce the workload by moving the big size 2 enemies, Pit Fighter, Knight, Lord, and Docker, from Act 1 and make them an Act 2 and beyond mob. Other possibilities could be wandering mini-bosses, which we know are being implemented already. Iconic ones like Shambler and Collector should remain in all acts, obviously, but you could add a few act-specific ones instead if a new enemy for each region is too high of an ask. In a similar vein, as I'm all aboard the more content train, another region would be very welcome. They said post-Cultist patch they would not be adding another region, so this is highly unlikely, unless as a DLC much later on, but would further aid run variety and diversity. My final big ask is a combat skill overhaul, similar to the Trinket overhaul. We now have lots of data with each of the 9 heroes' 3 distinct hero paths, and even after all the work to make more playstyles viable, there is still a significant minority of skills that are just completely unequipable in any scenario. That has been further highlighted with the new relationship updates Bless and Curse system. Beyond the unusable trash skills, there are also some abilities still in need of a desperate nerf, such as Take Aim, which has become a mandatory equip in every realistic Highwayman build, and of course heroes like Man-at-Arms, whose entire kits just make most of the other heroes feel inferior. A few smaller requests. I would like Provisioners to receive a buff, with Relic Accumulation receiving a nerf in a recent patch. I would like to be properly rewarded for taking the most difficult routes to gain those relics by being able to spend them well at inns, as well as allowing for a broader strategic element to inns and deciding which items to purchase. A larger variety, along with more guaranteed spawns like the food, or like with the hospital's static stock. In addition, I would like to see an increase in spawn chance for the universal indelible trinkets. In addition, the Hoarder, who is supposed to be buffed in order to make up for inferior inn selection, needs to have more shop guarantees as well, namely trinkets. Hero trinkets do not get near enough play in the current iteration of the game, and I'd like to see at least one guaranteed to spawn in every hoarder, along with a guaranteed hero trinket at every lair boss. More incentive for boss kills, and more incentive for hoarders as well, which Red Hook has said is a goal. Finally, we desperately need an increase in the overall speed of the run and a reduction in the runtime. For the first, while the relationship overhaul as well as overall optimizations have made this game run smoother, experienced players really need an official fast mode to breeze through stale parts of the game we have seen hundreds of times before. We know a stagecoach overhaul is coming eventually, and maybe that will make roads more enjoyable, but even then, a fast mode for that and everything else will still be appreciated. I know there are mods for that now, and those will be some of the first mods out on Steam release, but as a content creator especially, I feel a lot more comfortable with in-game solutions to in-game problems. As for game length, with my average run settling around 3.5 hours when focused, longer with distractions like stream chat, the game is just too long right now. It suffers in a similar way to Darkest Dungeon 1, whose mid-game could be stale once you filled out your roster, started getting upgrades and trinkets, and could easily crush most level 3 dungeons while waiting to move on to champion dungeons, which provided a much more invigorating challenge. Region 4 is just too long, often with the combats, especially road combats, not mattering much and rarely if ever challenging you. Cutting down Region 4 to Region 3 length, while cutting a node from Region 3 would allow for a much more digestible experience, while still leaving enough play to feel as if you're in control of a run. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe. I post new videos every day. And happy holidays to all those celebrating. This year has been a great experience for me here on YouTube, and I hope to continue growing as a content creator into the new year.